Alright, hello, welcome to Mo Money, Mo Problems, my budget deck tech series. So we're doing a modern deck tech today, my one of my color pie deck lists. We're starting with white here, doing a white aggro deck list. So in this series we'll be covering deck lists that are less than $50 as far as tapped out can calculate, and that goes through TCG Player, not a sponsor. um, yeah, so let's go ahead and jump in. And by no means is this a should you take this deck word for word. This is just merely a jumping off point, a good way to get into the format. Modern is a little bit hard to get into, and I understand that decks can range from anywhere from $400 to $800, and so I wanted to try to build a competitive wordy, kind of a tier 2 deck. Definitely not tier 1, but competitive, something that you can go and compete at your local game store, your LGS, and be sure to support your LGS, by the way. Although I assume that if you're watching this video, you're already supporting them. So this deck I named the Three Musketeers because you got your Three Musketeers. You got your Dryad Militant, your Hopeful Eidolon, and your Judge's Familiar. Those are your 3 1-drops. These are your main dudes that you'll be pumping up. So this is kind of sort of has an aura hexproof feel. That's a deck that is top 8'd quite a few modern tournaments. But basically what it does is it takes one of these guys, one of your 1-drops, and beefs them up with enchantments and instants, and swings in. This is a little bit more creatures than the normal aura hexproof deck, and it's also mono white, running 18 lands, real low, but that's because we have a huge 1-drop on our curve. This is our curve here. We've only got 1, 2, and 3 drops. So we don't need a whole lot of lands, and actually we don't want a whole lot of lands. We want to be drawing into gas and not lands. So let's start off with Dryad Militant. It's a 2/1 for 1. You're only going to be paying the white cost, so the green doesn't even matter. And it's really good against decks that play stuff like Snapcaster Mage or have flashback in some of their cards, because this just stops it. It cuts it out. So it's a little bit of kind of graveyard hate, but it's a good card because it's a 2/1 for 1 that has a relevant ability. I'll just skip to the next three musketeers. Is the Hopeful Eidolon. Now this is the main guy. This is the, well, I don't know who the main guy in the Three Musketeers is. Is there a main guy? I don't know much about the Three Musketeers other than that there are 3 of them. But this is the main guy you want because he's got lifelink. So he's only a 1/1, which is kind of a setback, but he has lifelink. That's the key here because that will keep you alive. That's what's going to keep you alive. You're going to pump up this guy and just keep gaining life. You don't really care what they're doing, how much they're hitting you for, unless it's infinite, which you have some answers to. But the lifelink is really strong here. And the fact that he's an enchantment creature comes into play later, and we'll talk about that in a second. Judge's Familiar, also a really important guy. This is the 3rd musketeer in the group. He's a 1/1 flying for 1. Also, you're only going to pay the white, so the blue doesn't matter. But he's also a counterspell on a stick. And this can save your other 2 musketeers if need be. If you've suited up one of those guys, you put a lot of pants on them, and suddenly they've got some sort of removal spell, this is your guy. This is what he's here for. And hopefully you'll have a couple of them down so you can counter them more than once. Because they can pay 1 to uncounter the counter. Anyways, our next creature here is Eidolon of Countless Battles. A very interesting card. I really like this card, and it's got a lot of, I don't know, got a lot of cool things about it. So it counts the number of creatures and or auras, and it gets +1/+1 for all of those. But you can also bestow it as an aura for 4, for just 1 more mana. So he comes in handy when you are at your 3-drop in your curve, or he comes in handy if you've already got a guy suited up and you got a little extra mana. And he will pump a lot. We are running 12 enchantments, so he will count all of those, and 20 creatures. Next we have Heliod's Pilgrim. We're only running 2 of these guys. It's a 3-drop for a 1/2, but they do search for an aura. So you can search for your Eidolon, you can search for your other Eidolon, and then any of these enchantments, because these are all auras. Then we have the Knight of the White Orchard. So this is the only reason, this guy right here is the only reason that I feel comfortable running 18 lands. 18 is real low, and unless you have some sort of reason, like if you're cycling through a bunch of cards for Living End, I mean, even then 18 is rather low. But you can pretty consistently get to 2 lands in this deck. And 2 is all you need, because then if you run into the Knight, then you get your 3rd. 3 is where you want to be, but the Knight gets you there, And it's a 2/2 for 2 with first strike, so it's still really good, and it's a good guy to suit up because he naturally has first strike. All right, let's move. Let's actually skip the instances for now, and let's move on to the enchantments. So 2 banishing lights. 3-drop. It's like Oblivion Ring, if you know that card better. It's actually the exact same card. I just wrote Banishing Light instead of Oblivion Ring. So if you have Oblivion Rings, then you can use that. There's a slight difference, but it doesn't really matter most of the time. Basically, it's a 3-drop exile target non-land permanent, so this can hit planeswalkers, creatures, enchantments, artifacts, you name it, except for lands. That's what non-land means. Glad I explained that. Ethereal Armor is the key aura in this deck. Ideally, you want to be playing this on turn 2 onto a Hopeful Eidolon, which then gives it +2/+2 in first strike, and it also has lifelink. And if it's turn 2, then you could be playing 2 of them. And then this also counts all other enchantments on the battlefield. So if you Banishing Light something that they have, not only do they lose something, but your thing grows. Next is Gift of Orizaba. This is mainly here for the flying. But the lifelink is actually really important as well, now that I look at it. The flying and the lifelink really just make this deck soar. Excuse me for the bad pun. But if you put it on the Hopeful Eidolon, he gets flying. If you put it on the Judge's Familiar, he gets lifelink. And of course, on the Dryad Militant, he gets both. But this enables you to get the lifelink that you really do need in this deck, as well as adds another aura. So if you have an Ethereal Armor, so like let's say, okay, you play Hopeful Eidolon turn 1, turn 2 you play 2 Ethereal Armors, turn 3 you play Gift of Orizaba. That is 4 enchantments on the field. So each Ethereal Armor gives +4/+4, plus the +1/+1 from Gift of Orizaba. So that's +9/+9 so far on a 1/1. So now you've got a 10/10 flying lifelink creature on turn 3. That's pretty good. That's pretty good for modern. I would say that's modern doable. The lifelink really just sets the pace. You swing in with a guy, even if it's not a 10/10, you're still creating a huge gap between the life totals. Next is Journey to Nowhere. This is another sort of, it's kind of like Banishing Light. It's 1 less, but it only targets creatures. But it adds another enchantment onto the field, so that's great. let's go back over here to the instances. So these are the ways to protect your guy, because you're suiting up one guy. Normally in an aura hexproof deck, your one guy already has hexproof, and so they can't target the one guy. But since we're doing this on a budget, you got to kind of build in stuff that protects your one guy. So a Johnny's Presence is nice because it has Strive. It gives you something to do with your lands later. But it gives +1/+1 and indestructible until end of turn. And this is a neat little kind of combat trick. You can put on that 1 extra damage to kill their Goyf or whatever. And then, of course, the indestructible is there to save your guy. Then we've got a 4 Brave the Elements. This just makes all your creatures, because all your creatures are white, gain protection from the color of your choice until end of turn. Emerge Unscathed is a targeted version of that, but it's got rebound, so you can rebound it next turn and then swing in for lethal. And then, even though this is a budget deck, the rest of this deck was so cheap, we could fit 2 Path of Exiles in here. And honestly, looking at the price here, we're at 42.17. You could fit another Path of Exile if you got it for a nice price, and still keep it around $50. Path of Exile is arguably one of the best removals in the modern format right now. But a cool interaction that you have is they get a land off of this, and so if you play Knight of the White Orchard after you path, their Tarmogoyf or whatever, you will most certainly get a land because they just got a land. And it's cool because when it comes off of the Knight of the White Orchard, it just says search your library for plains and put it onto the battlefield. It didn't say tapped. So you get an untapped plains. It's rather strong. But I only have 2 in here because I wanted to keep this protection, the numbers up. And again, this is totally up to you. You do this how you want to do it. This is just a jumping off point, something to give you good ideas. And this is unpolished, untested, just solely a jumping off point. That's why I haven't made a sideboard. Sideboard is really depends on the meta that you play in and the meta of your LGS, your local game store. So I didn't want to impose anything or implant any ideas in your brain. If I was to look for something that would be a little more expensive for this deck, so if you've decided to build something like this deck and you're looking for something more, you're looking for something to trade for, I would look for first more Path to Exiles. That is rather important, because this is a very strong removal and you need strong removal. And that would probably be the top thing that I would look for when trying to trade for something to improve this deck. Well, I hope you guys like this deck tech. If you have any ideas, if you build a deck tech off of this and do well in your local events, definitely post the link in the comments. I would love to see it, and I'd love to give you my opinion, or not give you my opinion if you don't want it. But yeah, tell me what you think in the comments below. But otherwise, make sure you subscribe for further content. Other budget modern decks are going to come out. I'm going to do all of the different colors in the pie. So look forward to that, and we'll see you next time. Thanks for watching, guys.